Hello, it's 4:30 p.m. here at Bangalore. Welcome all to this session on early childhood education. My name is Rajagopal, and we have Kinnari here with me. ECE, or Early Childhood Education. It is also a specialization option in our MA education program at Azim Premji University. We will cover those aspects as well. So people who are new to the Hangout, if you want to ask any questions, do type in your questions in the Hangout window. Although you'll see a ask a new question link. So enter a question and click submit. We will take those questions. If you experience any technical difficulties, do type in them in the box. So before I start answering questions or we get into the discussion, let me first introduce you, Kinnari. Kinnari is our faculty with the School of Education at Azim Premji University. Her interests or the courses that she teaches are child development and learning and the early childhood education related courses. She is also involved in an effort to improve government's early childhood education system in one of the district institutes of Azim Premji Foundation. So this, I understand, involves both a continuous on the field and research engagement. Is that right, Kinnari? So Kinnari's interests are in child development, early childhood education, and inclusive education. She has been engaged in the field for more than 10 years. In an earlier role before joining the university, she was engaged with Azim Premji Foundation and has worked in the efforts to improve the public education system. This included different roles. One was to revise the school assessment practices where we were working, and she also participated in the revision of curriculum for the B.Ed programs,
the B.Ed and the D.Ed.
D.Ed programs, pre-service teacher education
programs, yeah.
in the states we were working. Kinnari, before we start getting into taking the questions, could you give a brief introduction about the topic for the viewers, and then we will take those questions.
Yeah, sure.
Over to you.
Yeah. Yes, so we'll talk about early childhood education today. As the name indicates, we're talking about early childhood years. Early childhood years is about children, children and their lives. What is the potential that a child is born with, and where is it that the environment can lead the child to, the potential that the child comes with. So the early childhood, as is popularly known, early childhood development or early childhood years are years from birth to 8 years of age.
Okay.
Children below 8 years of age and the first 8 years of life are considered to be the most significant years of life, and they are referred to as windows of opportunity, the years of windows to opportunity. Neuroscience and several other researchers have said that this is the time period in one's life when maximum brain development happens. And the first 2 years of life, it's extremely rapid, and it continues till about 8 years of age when the brain development, neural connections and synapses reaches a certain level of plateau, and then 14 years and that. So while the brain is plastic and you can constantly, your experiences can mold your potential and abilities, but a significant part of what you can do in later years of life is determined in the first few years of life. Studies have also shown that a lot of economic perspectives have kind of tried to influence this field, and it is becoming more and more popular over the last few years. And one of the significant researches is about if a government or an institution is investing more for children and their opportunities in early years, then the kind of achievement that that government or that human beings will have over a period of time, the society will have over a period of time, is likely to be most. than investing, say, directly in higher education or directly in school levels. So there is a lot of international focus and thrust, especially now with the Sustainable Development Goals and earlier Millennium Development Goals and all of that. So there is this global emphasis on investing in early years, and that is to do with this idea of brain development and how far can you contribute to the child's early years and development opportunities. Now, if we see that as a child, and all of us have been children once, so if you look at our own past and how we've developed, so the first 2 years of life, which is essentially infancy and the early years, is around family members, caregivers, primary caregivers for most children in our country, or most children in any household, except, of course, children in marginalized conditions, children in institutionalized settings, right? So all of that is also the context that when we talk about children. The next level is when the child begins to leave home and go to a more, gets engaged with the neighborhood, and school being the most significant part of that neighborhood, where the child begins to spend, say, 3 hours to 6 hours, and by the time you grow up, you almost spend about 8 hours in the school time. So there is this institution, or this time that the child begins to spend outside of home in a more formal, structured manner is, and typically that happens from 3 to 6 years or 3 to 5 years, which we refer to as a period of early childhood or preschool years, right? Period of early childhood, as it is referred to. So there is when we talk about the domain of early childhood development, we are referring to birth to 8. When we talk about the domain of early childhood education, we are essentially referring to this period when children begin to go out of home in more popular scenario, and in a more common sense scenario, that there are children after 2, of course, in urban areas, and now with women entering the workforce in a more systematic manner, we do see children out of homes from 6 months of age and 18 months of age, right? So, but when we talk about the formal teaching, learning processes, active engagement of children in classroom environments and all of that, then we are referring to this period of 3 to 6 years of age. Of course, in our country, children, school admissions happen for children above 5 years, and therefore most preschools cater to children below 5 years of age. But at the same time, there is this very critical link between preschools and early primary years, where that is the first grade and the second grade. So as we notice, it's birth to 8. So it is again this idea of interlinkage or a link between preschool years and early primary years is something that is very critical and usually goes unrecognized, and we aren't able to systematically do something for first 2 grades, right, of schooling. So this is broadly the, if I define the space of early childhood education.
Fantastic. I think that was quite a good introduction. I remember this for like window of opportunity is what you said during that period. It sounds very important. I'll take those questions now, Kinnari. So hope it's in the right order. I'll take Hari's question. It's asking what is the best way to give education during the early childhood period. So thanks for those questions coming in. People who joined late, if you would like to ask questions, come to the Hangout window. There's a green button on your right bottom. So click that ask a new question thing. Yeah, so over to you.
Yeah, so what do you do with young children, right? Would we just train them to be adults and therefore teach them mannerisms? Will we teach them to behave themselves in a certain social environment? Or are we letting the children be and be children themselves, and therefore provide a lot of experiences that will help them develop? When I mean experiences, again, as theories and research says, that early years is a time when a lot of sensorial experiences is what makes all those connections in our brain, and therefore as much as sensorial experiences, as much as active involvement by the adults, as much as we leave children to themselves and develop through their interest areas. Of course, the idea of scaffolding and how children can be developed by adult participation. So it is more a collaborative kind of a space between the child and the adult, which is very thought through and is an open space. It cannot be a strict curriculum that we will teach ABCD and the child will begin to speak ABCD and the child will then say what is an apple. But in order to understand what is an apple, the child should taste the apple. The child should know the texture of apple. The child should be able to say that it is a fruit and why it is not a vegetable, or will it get spoiled or not spoiled. So it is this conceptual development of what ideas are. How do you understand your world outside? And that is what early childhood education should prepare children for. That how is it that they are prepared to understand the world around them. Who am I? Who are others around? What are these different things in my environment? Be it life, is it an ant? Is it a vegetable? What is it that I'm doing? And all the education of the child needs to happen from concepts that are around the child and the child's environment. So yes, so early childhood education, what do? We make children more and more aware, familiar, become a part of the environment that they are in. And that would, according to me, be the core objective of giving any form of education to children, and not teaching them numbers. And of course, concept development does need to happen, but it cannot be a strict ABCD, seeing them as young adults and trying to do something with them.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll take the next question. I think it's a follow-up question. It's from Shreya. She's asking, what are some ways that parents must essentially support their children at home? So this, you gave an introduction about what happens in that period. What role does parents play is what...
So a slight repetition of what I just said, but again, as parents and as primary adults in the child's environment, the role that each parent would need to play is to understand the child and let the child be and let the child experience childhood. And when I say this, experiencing childhood is the curiosity, the desire, the inquisitiveness that is there in the child, and how do you develop that? How do you encourage that? And not tell children that, please don't ask whys. Stop asking your whys. Don't ask so many questions. Let me do my work, right? So you see this happening as more and more parents get busier with their lives. But as parents, to respect the child for what he or she is, and to give that opportunity to flourish through the kind of active engagement that the parents can have in their day-to-day lives and conversations. Children have so many ideas, so many things to say, so many things to share about their observations, about people around, to experience and explore, the need to touch, to feel, to run around, to jump around. So how is it you develop all these various physical, motor, socio-emotional, cognitive aspects about the child is in a very conscious manner. I think parents today need to do that, because it's very easy to focus on yourself and not on the child. So
thank you. I think that's a message. It's a message for me as well as a parent. Before I go to the next question, Kinnari, so what is the system now in India for early child education? And if you can also, because we talk about comparing with what's happening internationally, so if you could give us a idea about both.
Right. So in India, as we are a fairly heterogeneous society, the government, the public and the private play a more or less equal role in catering to about 160 million children that we have below the age group of 6 years of age. So the Integrated Child Development Services Scheme is a large-scale government effort that has been fairly active and instrumental in our country since early 1970s.
70s, okay.
Yeah, and this particular scheme has multifold objectives, and from health and nutrition and psychosocial development, immunization, vaccination. So it is this scheme actually caters to almost every village and children of those villages. And the Anganwadi Center, as it is more popularly known, is the unit where the ICDS services are offered. ICDS services are also offered to pregnant and lactating women because development happens right from conception. It also offers its services to adolescent girls towards anemia and other guidance and counseling for health issues and all of that. So there is this huge body and mechanism which most of us should be able to find in our vicinity if we try and ask where is the Anganwadi center here. So that's the large scale system. Then there is a certain bureaucratic structure of this particular services scheme, which falls into the Ministry of Women and Child Development, which caters to the children of the rural villages. Again, here you see that women in rural areas are also going out for work, and therefore a lot of states and their ICDS service centers are actually offering creche services to children. So they stay from 9 to 4, and there is a midday meal and a snack and with certain nutritional components. So it's a fairly large scale systematic effort that the government puts in. So far the government has, as I said, focused on nutrition and health needs, and this particular scheme has played a significant role in reducing the mortality rate, infant mortality rate and morbidity rate in our country. But what is something that the scheme is now gearing up towards is focusing on early childhood education. And how is it that you engage children when they are in the center? A 2-year-old coming to a center, what is it that you do with those children in order for this active brain development to happen? The other important thing as far as the Indian system is concerned is the private sector. And you would find private preschools charging fees from rupees 50 to rupees 10. Isn't government regulations as we would have desired to start a school or appoint teachers, or how many teachers, how much space per child, all of that. Some governments have become proactive and they are beginning to do something about it. But yes, this is the other large sector where a lot of franchisees and other things is what you see in this in our country. The early childhood education policy is something which is as late as 2013 is when the country has recognized the importance of children below 6 years of age and the need to do something for children below 6 years of age. And with this comes a certain set of standards that the government of India have laid out. Of course, the execution, implementation of standards is something which is, we'll have to see how long it takes. There is a certain curricular guideline that has come up now in the last 3 years. 2012-14 is when the Women and Child Development Department has come up with a national curriculum framework now for early childhood. Of course, it isn't a binding document yet, but a lot of state governments and the ICDS, state level ICDS services schemes, Women and Child Development Department have a mandate to adapt that curriculum and follow that. Yes. So there is at least some progress on the public sector. The private sector is fairly heterogeneous and diverse and has its own set of challenges and own set of aspirations that you see on the field.
True. I'll take a lot of questions coming in. I had one more question on this, but I'll come back after asking the question. So, I'll take Hari's question. I think the follow-up question is language also important
for young children?
How to choose the language is probably asking as part of the early childhood.
So this is a very common question which all of us encounter, and we in India should certainly be amused that most of us know more than 2 languages. And that, again, as research and studies show that the human brain has the potential to pick up multiple languages, especially in the first 5 years of life.
And first 5 years of life
as well. And it's the critical periods of development, as we call them, and language as a critical period, critical component of development. So first 5 to 7 years of life, children who are placed in multilingual settings fairly easily pick up more than 2 or 3 languages and are able to get the grammar and syntax of that language fairly right. And therefore this idea, we constantly debate whether English or no English or home language. Of course, that English is fast perpetuating in our lives. English shouldn't become the only monolingual households with English speaking. May have the danger of child not learning multiple languages, but otherwise most children pick up several languages in their environments, and if systematically introduced to the child, the children do pick up languages. So language and multilingual environments, I think, can be the only rich environment that we can give to our children. Yeah.
So I'll just probably follow up question, the Gyan Vikash asking. Hari, hope that answer your question. See, what is the main focus needed in early childhood education? If I can rephrase that, is it language or is it the? You said nicely that it's not about learning ABCD or not numerical ability or anything like that. But as part of the curriculum that has come up, do they focus on one important area? I mean, what's
I would think that the key curricular goal for early childhood education would be to provide as many quality experiences as possible, be it in terms of language, be it in terms of social situations, be it in terms of being able to cognitively orient yourself to various complexities in life. So the focus should be holistic development of children, and not merely just academic or just curricular or no curriculum kind of a scenario.
Hope that answers your question, Gyan Vikas. There's a follow-up question from Shreya. I think Shreya is probably not satisfied with the previous answer. The question is, would you say that early child education ties strongly with good parenting? That's or to phrase it in another way, school is what, if you look at that early childhood space, let it be the Anganwadi or the daycare center or the play school. But that's one system. But the child again comes back home, which is a different system. How important is that? Just link that question. So it's not just parenting. I'm looking at the other stakeholders also.
Yeah. So it is the social environment.
Yeah.
If a child has an adequate social environment, which is going to help the child in exploring the surroundings, is going to help the child think through various things, then perhaps you don't need a formal school. Children who are in fairly literate and which have very stimulating environments and several kinds of toys and several kind of material to engage with, and there are adults who are also engaging with the child systematically, right? I'm talking of that kind of an ideal scenario where the child has sufficient peers, adults, care and stimulation available to the child, then perhaps you don't need to send the child to any form of preschool, right? And that used to perhaps happen in our country in the earlier days, when a lot of adults would be around the child, there would be a lot of siblings around in the child, right? Which is slowly vanishing from our systems, and therefore this need to provide for an external space where children can go and spend their time meaningfully, right? You would have seen lots of children in villages spending time outside, playing, exploring, touching sand, and doing all kinds of other things, which were very enriching for life.
True. Thank you. That reminds me one question. I mean, I think you touched upon that. What are the regulations? Because we see the play schools coming up in every nook and corner, and it just comes up the way you can set up a small shop. So,
so like I said, that in our country we now have a policy, we have quality standards laid out, we have the curriculum framework laid out, but we still don't have regulations for establishing preschools. Karnataka has recently begun to do that by specifying per square feet or per child space needed and infrastructure needed. It's a very, very recent move that Karnataka as a state has begun begun to take, but having formal norms for establishing, having curricula for establishing preschools, having qualified teachers, we don't have any of that in our country yet, and it is a free space. So therefore, you would find a lot of people, a lot of for-profit work that happens in the early childhood space. And I remember one of the.
I think we are answering Fazal's question
as well.
Fazal, I just saw your question. Probably we're answering your question that government makes many rules for children, but most of the steps are in vain. I think he's generally talking about. I don't think that's right. I completely agree with that statement.
That's not true. But I think the field itself is slowly gaining attention and appreciation, and I think there is a lot of positive movement happening. So hopefully, with a lot more collective effort, we should have a more systematic profession of early childhood development in our country. Right now, it's fairly loose at several ends.
So Fazal, just I was having a discussion with a colleague. So was working somewhere else. Previously, my was my ex-colleague. So one of the government programs which has benefited is the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. We were able to send a lot of kids to school. Now that reminds me that then we have the Right to Education Act that came in. But Kinnari, we were discussing previously, you said the Right to Education Act does not include early childhood education.
Children below 6 years of age. While our constitution recognizes care and education of children below 6, but the right to education itself. So there is a lot of so therefore it is not mandatory for children to attend preschool. It is not in that sense, right? Like we are saying that every child has a right to go to school. We are still yet to recognize that every child has a right to go to a preschool. We are not there yet.
Thank you. Let me take the next question. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. Just give us a moment. Thank you for sending those questions. It's really interesting conversation. I think we answered Pawan. We'll quickly repeat what we said in the beginning. The question is, what is the definition of early childhood and what is the regulation for a child? Which you answered.
I don't know about the
definition for early childhood. You said it's from
birth to 8 years is considered as a period of early childhood, and it is a period which has the most potential to develop. And there is a fairly several researchers suggest that there is a long-term impact of what experiences you get in early years. Regulation for child, and there are several regulations that impact a child. You have legal definitions of what is a child. You have I just define children and early childhood as below 8 years, and that goes on. So we don't have a regulation for child. As I just said, we have some norms falling in place for the field of early childhood education, but we are yet to have systematic pan-India regulatory mechanisms for early childhood services in our country.
Thank you. I'll take this. This looks like an interesting question. It's related to inclusive education, Kinnari. The question from Shreya. The question she's asking is, do you think that early child education can be an effective way to diagnose learning disabilities at a young age, or even with some symptoms?
Thank you for asking this question. Fairly insightful. Yes, so early years and knowledge about young children's development. What is it that you do when a child doesn't begin still speak when a child is 3 years of age, or a child is not able to engage socially up to an effective level. Some of these are very minute observations that a caregiver or a teacher in the child's environment needs to be aware of, and it will knowing early childhood, about early childhood development, about the kinds of issues that children may begin to face in terms of the larger social context, as well as individual levels of development. There is a lot of potential to diagnose early differences, right? Not disabilities, but early differences among children. Each child will have his or her own pace of development. We do recognize that, but a fairly well-informed caregiver and who is constantly around the child should be able to gauge needs that special needs that the child may be needing. Yes, so it is a very, very important area. Typically, because of lack of understanding and awareness about the field, a lot of children go undiagnosed for a very, very early age, and early identification doesn't happen, which leads to further complications. So yes, identifying early, beginning therapy early is something that this field has a lot of potential to improve.
Thanks, Shreya. That's a good question. I was thinking, Kinnari, when you said there aren't enough uh, regulation to start a preschool or preschool, then I was thinking, who are the teachers there in that school teaching them? Now, are they qualified? Not the qualification. Are they trained enough to identify those aspects?
Yeah, yeah. Which is in some sense a gap as far as the profession is concerned. In the Anganwadi sector that I was talking about, you would find a local village woman, a daughter or a daughter-in-law of that village, who is appointed by the government, is on a contract basis, and she may have a 10th pass, she's SSLC pass, or she has a 12th pass, so she may not have a formal graduate degree, but she's responsible for catering to this 20-30 children. And while she's so this idea that it is any woman or any person who can work with children is eligible to be with children and think through the development, perhaps yes, but there is a systematic formal training that and development that teachers, caregivers would need to go to children. So that they are more informed and they know what to do with children and identify some of these things that they that will help children develop in a systematic manner. Yeah.
So for the viewers, I should also say that Kinnari anchors the ECE specialization here at the university. So Kinnari, let's talk a little bit about the specialization. Now I can see a question also coming from Ruta Desai. I will taking your question to talk about the opportunities after an ECE specialization. The topics. Let's do this. Let's talk about how the specialization is structured.
Right.
Then the field work involved, and we will cover the opportunities as well. Does it touch upon developmental psychology? What are the places other than ICDS one can work with?
Okay.
Over to you.
Yeah. So the early childhood education specialization is one of the fields that students within the MA education program can take. We have the curriculum and pedagogy specialization, the school organization leadership specialization, and the third specialization on early childhood education. Now, we are talking about the larger domain of education in the first semester, where we have a set of core courses that students take. Among those core courses are courses on child development and learning, which focuses on processes, developmental and psychological processes that have been theorized about learning, about children, about holistic development of children, about play and what role does play have in learning. So with that base that is created in the first year of the MA education program, the early childhood education specialization takes off from there, and we have a set of courses that focus on principles and practices of early childhood programs, which deals with philosophers, policies, both nationally and globally. What is the field like? We have a fairly long course on curriculum and pedagogy for early years. As a
curriculum and pedagogy for early years.
Early childhood education. It's early years education is a fairly long course which looks at principles of curriculum, which looks at the various models that you see around, right? You see Montessori method, or you see multiple intelligences and all of that. So what are the philosophical curricular basis for some of those models, the Reggio Emilia model and the high scope? So we talk a lot about those models, and we also have courses on how do you look at planning and managing institutions that cater to early childhood, in which we look at the ICDS system in a fairly great detail. We look at teacher development in that course. We have have courses on arts in early years. Like I said,
Arts in
the role
early
of play in learning, the role of art in learning is also fairly significant. Inclusive education, which students of early childhood specialization can also take. Concept development. What is conceptual development in early childhood years like? Can a child understand what is a non-living and a living thing? Or can children automatically begin to understand that something is more and something is less? And children do have a lot of these innate potentials. Not everything has to be taught. So what are these concepts that children natively seem to possess, and how are you going to build on that your curriculum on each of these is another course that we offer. We also have a lot of workshops that we do for our practicum site teachers, for teachers, for Anganwadi workers, where our students go. We do ensure that students get a mix of experience, both the ICDS and private sector, so that they are prepared to contribute to the field in a much more holistic manner. That's a fairly systematic effort that we put in. Workshops for teachers, students going to these sites and teaching children there, trying to understand the
this
sites.
is part of the Wednesday practicum.
Wednesday practicums.
So every Wednesday here is the Wednesday here is reserved as a day for practicums. So it's for you to immediately connect the theory with the practice. I can say so.
And it gives the scope to and see what you were taught in class, to implement that, and those are again guided experiences. And the field practice.
The longer field.
So the third semester of the MA education program has a very long 6-week field internship, for which we prepare through the year. So from July we start preparing students towards proposal and all of that, and finally it's in November that you go and do your field internship. And during this, students our first batch of specialization students has presented their work, and they've done fairly interesting things ranging from research, teaching, reflective teaching, developing a curricula and trying to execute it, done a workshop for Anganwadi workers and community members in a fairly direct manner through engaging at those Anganwadi sites, going and looking at various kinds of preschool models, inclusive practices in early years, and looking at schools that offer inclusive curricula, going and understanding what are lives of slum children like, and what are the care facilities, what are the kind of non-government organizations that work in early childhood space. So there is a lot of research, teaching, module-based work that developing module and trying to execute those modules are going and understanding programs of other places. So there is a scope to engage with the sector depending on what the student desires to do and what is it that what interests the student. So this is broadly the curriculum.
Excellent. And where do you see them working after this? I mean, ICDS being a government enterprise, there could be NGOs trying to work with them. That is one idea. Other opportunities.
So like I was mentioning earlier, that the early childhood education space in our country, the for-profit private sector, is almost a 6,000 crore industry. Is what one of the franchisee persons whom I was speaking to just said that. So it is a huge sector and is constantly looking out for informed professionals who can develop curricula, work on the ground. As I said, there aren't teacher qualifications. We don't have regulations for appointing teachers, so a lot of opportunity to join directly as teachers on the ground, to get appointed in these various private firms, or you may develop your own, you may want to set up your own preschool till the time the regulations come up. The ICDS sector, a lot of non-governmental organizations work with the ICDS sector in our country and do very good work, in fact. So the scope to work with them, they have appointed our students from this batch, and they do constantly keep looking out for more informed, qualified early childhood professionals to contribute to
the work. So you part of the placement process now?
Placement process now, and also off campus. A few students, we've fairly, because there was a few students this time, we've managed to get students to sites that they are interested in working.
Hope that answers the question, Ruth. I'll take the next one. I think probably a continuation question by Radhika. the how easy or challenging will be for someone who specializes in ECE and get involved in a in a broader area of education.
Yeah,
Now, probably we should good question. We
good
should tell
question.
that
Yeah, yeah.
specialization is an area that they choose to focus in the second year.
Second year.
The first year still they
Yeah.
get a foundation.
Yes.
Plus, they still have opportunity to do electives outside the specialization.
Yes, that's right.
And anything else,
Yeah.
Kinnari?
No, so you've said it all. That it is, you will get opportunities and understanding of working in the larger education domain,
Correct.
of which early childhood education is a subset. And like you just said, that while we have 18 credits worth of elective requirements that
For
come from the
specialization.
specialization, but you still have additional 4 to 6 credits that you can take and take
Yeah.
courses outside of this specialization
That's
as well.
That's
And then you have another 32 credits that you are anyways doing in the area of education. So you will pass out as a MA in education student, and that kind of carries through to be able to work from
True.
early childhood years to
True.
elementary and
True.
high school years. So.
Yeah. So specialization
It
is an
shouldn't
option
be a
available.
constraining
Absolutely,
factor. In
absolutely.
fact, a lot of our specialization students have got fairly readily employed in organizations that are working in school education spaces. Yeah,
Fair.
and they've done fairly well in that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right, I'll take the next set of questions coming in. This is a overall, this is not talking about early childhood, the ways of holistic development of children. So I think you can talk about that, how important it is the period of early childhood. I think you said that. You said about that how you talk about the brain development also.
Right, right.
So
Okay. So you will, those of you who join the program will certainly go through some of this. But if you look at an individual's development, you are constantly looking at in ability of or development of young children or individuals. Say to do with the physical motor development. How is it? How high are you able to jump? How confidently are you able to walk? Are you able to balance yourself? Right. So the physical motor aspect. How socially are you able to engage? As a young child, are you being too shy and sensitive to something, or are you becoming stranger anxious, which is a very natural thing that happens to children? Are you comfortable talking in public? Are you so a lot of social, emotional aspects, issues of identity that begin to get shaped in early years. As I said, working with complex problems and understanding the world around you as the kind of development. You look at language and the stages of language development, and how do you learn language? Is it by repeating A several times or writing A several times? Is it something that you learn by having just lots of books around and people who are telling you stories around? So when you look at holistic development, you look at how do you develop the idea of ethics, what is right and wrong, right? That happens from very early years. A child who is being said, stop, don't do this because you will fall, or stop, don't do that because you will hurt somebody. Those are kind of engagements that begin to happen with children from a very, very young age. And you are talking about development of children in all of these areas. So when we're talking about holistic development of children, we are talking about developing material resources, engaging children in a lot of social situations and environments that will help the child develop in all of these. So there isn't one way to develop, help a child develop holistically, but what are the several things that you can do around the child to make the child a confident, caring, young individual who is ready to go to school and ready to face the world outside, right? So that is how I would.
Thank you. Thanks.
Think about ways. Yeah.
Thanks, Kinnari. I'll take before I go. I see a lot of questions coming in. We will definitely answer. We got around 20 minutes to go, but I'll take Ruta's follow-up question. Thanks, Ruta, that it helped you. Thanks for asking that question again. We missed to
emphasize,
emphasize on the research
part.
opportunities,
Yeah.
and the MA education program. Kinnari, if you could talk about the
So
core course.
thank you again. Like I said, within the MA education program, there are several core courses that students are expected to take in the first year, which is compulsory for everybody. One of the core courses is Introduction to Educational Research, and this particular course equips or introduces you to what social science research is, and helps develop some tools and think through methods of development. You have a fairly extended field practice, which also gets engaged and helps you do a research on the ground. The third semester field internship that I had just described also has the option of doing a thesis or a dissertation and doing a systematic research. It could be a very individual action research, or it could be a slightly larger research where you are collecting data from several people. So there is, we do try and make it again an individualized field component, which with somebody who is very keen on becoming a teacher will be given guidance and will be prepared to be a teacher, and can go to a site which will help he or she to be a teacher. Somebody who's keen on becoming a researcher and pursuing higher studies, we do encourage students to take on systematic research that can be portrayed as their dissertation work when they apply for higher studies. In India, as I said, the field of early childhood has had its history in child development departments of various home science colleges. And it is, in that sense, the early childhood education domain has come about from developmental psychology as a larger disciplinary area. So that, I think it was Ruta's previous question which looked at that. So yes, so this now, by having program early childhood specialization within the MA education program, you are beginning to look at issues of education of preschoolers,
right?
And the field really needs a lot of Indian work. Today, we are so heavily dependent on Western literature and research is happening. So, I would think that potential students who see themselves contributing to research and writing in the country and establishing the field of early childhood education really is a huge potential that lies ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Kinnari. Ruta, hope that answers your question on any areas where you see a lot of research happening.
I am not too clear about this question, but what I can say is that a lot of research happens on the ICDS Anganwadi centers. Within our country, a lot of evaluation studies, a lot of programmatic research that happens on ICDS and what is happening, NGOs that engage in work and are trying to speak about that work. The preschool sector, I think, is something that really needs to be catered to in terms of both research and contributing to that sector in a much more meaningful manner.
I was reading an article where people were telling there should not be any regulation for preschool thing, it should be left to them. Now, but before we say that, we should have some research done to say as to whether they should be or they should
not be.
There are plenty of opportunities, Ruta. I'll take the next question. Let's looks like a follow-up question from Fazal. This is not an early childhood education question. This is a general question about compulsory education for all children is the cherished dream for every government, but the subjective is far away even more than half a century later, and still there is no improvement in children education in the country. Because you have worked in the public education system in the country.
I wouldn't be so I wouldn't like to be so in this kind of a situation. I think I'm very hopeful. A lot of efforts are happening. If it was not for those efforts, we wouldn't have had the right to education, whatever limitations there might be in the act, right? Or the fact that you were talking about the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and how universalization of education as an emphasis and a focus has led to a lot of children going to schools, right? So while slow, I think the magnitude of work that is required in our country is something which is very it's very difficult to fathom and understand,
That's
right?
correct.
And every effort that goes into that process is perhaps going to lead to a happier life and childhood for a child of our country, right? So I wouldn't feel so negative, and I'm very hopeful that there is a slow progress. Thankfully, say now, even after 66 years of independence, 65 years of independence, we now have the early childhood education policy, right?
That's
So while there is a slower recognition of the contributions that are required for children, and spaces that engage with children, be it formal or non-formal sectors, but there is something happening. So,
Absolutely.
and I hope
And
that continues to happen.
we are talking about a huge system. If you look at the, I mean, the size is
Yeah.
huge. You're
It's,
talking about around
the
250,
scale is just not
250
imaginable.
million
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
school-going children.
Of
So
which 160 million are children below 6 years
6
of
years.
age.
Oh, that's
So that's the kind of numbers we are talking about. Yeah.
So there is hope, Fazal. Thanks for asking that question. There is hope. I'll take. We did answer. I think this is Juno's question. Government present in many parts of the country is emphasizing early childhood education through ICDS, but how far our system is making it a success. At times, the Anganwadis is not called. I mean, the work person is not trained. Your views, Kinnari, we did say that.
Yeah. So this is a very right picture that you are portraying through your question. Yes, so it is a system which is trying to intervene, but as I said, a lot more needs to be done. As far as it's not just enough to have a caretaker for children, but you need to have a caretaker who is informed about what children are like. How do you? What are the ways of holistic development that somebody was asking? Then how is it that you engage children meaningfully? Is it okay to just keep children quiet and let them sit all day? Is it only important to make them used to sitting for 6 hours so that they can go to the school next, right? Is that the kind of school readiness that you're talking about? Or are you talking about children and their development, and therefore giving the kind of training that teachers need? Are you talking to them about children and their development? What are the teaching learning material you can use? How is it that you manage your time? How is it that you manage the center? So there is a lot of input that the government does need to give to the ICDS system as a whole, and hopefully it will someday. So I think as more and more organizations and people are contributing, and as I said that of late, as late as 2 years now, the Integrated Child Development Services Scheme has a revised plan of action, and that plan of action is actually emphasizing early childhood education and its work happening on within the Anganwadi centers. So they have laid a certain systematic plan of action for development of teachers and all of that. But yes, it's again, we have to see and hopefully contribute to make that happen.
Thank you. Thanks, Juno, for that question. Thanks, Kinnari. Couple of questions more. I think it's thanks, Ruta. So thank you. Hope that helped. We got 10 more minutes to go. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Piuli, I'll take Piuli's question. We did talk about this. Is homeschooling better than the regular schooling? Is she talking about the?
Yeah, so again, a rich quality environment, stimulating environment available for children. If parents and adults and there are other peers around who can qualitatively engage the child at home, then perhaps it may be a better option for the child to be at home in a certain safe environment than sending a child to a preschool or a daycare center where the child is constantly at somebody else's disposal and not one doesn't know what's happening there.
So I was reminded of, I was talking to somebody who has worked in the education sector for long. So he said he didn't believe in this idea of early childhood education. But now after seeing the way the homes are structured, the nuclear family and
families
the
and
apartments, so he said, there is a need. There is a need
for children to go out and be in safer, more stimulating environments.
Gyan, we did answer the right age for children to going to play school for learning something in childhood, and also the age is right for the mind growth of children. You did answer that.
But maybe a little more directly that it is important for the child to go to the right kind of environment. The right, it is not as if a child who goes to preschool will do better in school. Maybe he will be better prepared to sit and be with unfamiliar peers and teachers around. So that kind of social preparation will be there. But a stimulating home environment should actually also be sufficient for a child. So a right age, a safe, caring environment. If the child is getting wherever the child is getting, if the child is going to be alone at home all day with a daycare provider or a maid or a nanny, then perhaps the child goes to a more safer, more stimulating environment might be a better option. So there, in the current changing scenario in our country, it's very difficult to say what is the right age to be at home. Of course, home, there can be no safer environment than the home as long as possible, right? So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Uh, I'll take, I think there's a follow-up question from Hari. We did answer, how do you find homeschooling is appropriate for early school going? Hari, we did answer in a previous way. Yes, it all depends on what kind of environment
Environment is
we
available.
provide for
Yes,
the
yes.
child. I'll take Suchitra's. This is both, I think Ankur and Suchitra asking quite similar question. Play as a medium of learning, and importance of joyful learning. How can Anganwadi workers specialized into these two aspects of Shubhra? Sorry, it's not Suchitra. Shubhra is asking that.
Yes. So, what is play? And you ask a young child, and they say, "I play all day. Play is my work. My parents are working, and I'm playing, and playing is my work." So, this has been a fairly known old quote from various scholars and philosophers, that play is a child's work. And play, while we think it is play and joyful, but it is constantly engaging the child in more and more complex thought processes. Children playing with blocks, or children playing with dolls, and are doing role plays and living out their lives playing. So play as play is a necessary medium of learning, especially in early years when we are talking about exploration and constant stimulation. And with play, with the thing that the child is trying to do, that interests the child, joyful learning, I think, comes with it. So yes, I just wanted to add that when we talk about explorations, and one of you had asked about the ways of holistic development, right? So engaging with material, engaging with art, engaging with clay, engaging with textures, engaging with colors, right? How is it that you stimulate these various connections that we were saying, your brain to constantly think through and experience several sensorial things around. I just wanted to kind of highlight that when we are talking about play and learning and early development, it is everything that will potentially enrich the child. Talking about wildlife around, talking about material around, all of that. So yeah, I think this was a previous question somebody had asked.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Ankur, we probably answered. Is it like a playway school or something different? It's not. It's.
So you have various philosophies, right? Many of us will be familiar with Montessori. Now, what are children doing in Montessori setting? They are playing with blocks. They are playing with some things. So, will we call it play, or will you call it teaching learning? It's a very hard distinction to make. But yes, it does. The kind of activities that young children are engaged in, even if in a systematic curriculum, they do seem like play, right? And for children, it's good to consider if they're playing something and not being taught how to do clay work, or how to do artwork, or how to play blocks. You don't teach all of them.
That reminds me, my friend said, who's working in this area, said she was shocked to see kids sitting in a disciplined fashion in a play school where they should be playing. But they're all sitting like.
And that is not what you want to do with children. So yes.
Correct. So great, Piyuli. Thank you. Thanks for the comment. I'm glad that it helped. That creating a right environment for children at home to have the right early childhood education. That's the question. Creating the right environment.
And that would also need some amount of reading and
absolutely.
It can't be a mobile or an app or a tablet that is in front of the child, and it's the right environment.
So I'll take the next question from Hari, if a teacher has B.Ed degree as his degree but don't know child psychology, will he be able to do good relation with children? I don't think child psychology is part of the
B.Ed
B.Ed
curriculum
curriculum.
as
Over
well.
to you,
Yes.
Kinnari.
Yeah, so B.Ed as a program, like you just said, has a significant part of child psychology in it, like philosophy and sociology and all of that, and subjects. But B.Ed as a qualifying teacher education degree is preparing individuals to be teachers, and teachers that too of the high school. Right, you have the B.Ed, which prepares teachers for younger years, early primary years, and up to grade 7. Right, so B.Ed prepares for, in that sense, secondary education. For any teacher, I would think, be it a early childhood teacher or a preschool, primary, higher secondary teacher, knowing about children, knowing about development, knowing about processes of learning is, I think, extremely important. And an individual or a teacher who can really understand these nuances of how is it that children learn. Do they learn by talking, or do they learn by doing, or do they learn by sufficient support from adults, or do they learn a lot of things from environment and their context by observations? A lot of this is driven by theories that psychologists and developmental psychologists have had to say. So yes, I wouldn't. I don't know if I answer your question, but just knowing child psychology isn't enough, and child psychology is something which is necessary for anybody to be a teacher. I would think so. Yeah.
We do get Hari B.Ed students who come and engage the 2 years to do a MA education program here.
Yeah.
So some of them may even choose to do early childhood education specialization.
Yes, and a lot of them who wish to think that they want to start their own school, have a B.Ed, have taught in early in a certain school setup, and then they think they do early childhood education and can start their own school, starting from preschool to higher ed. Yeah.
Uh, I'll quickly finish. You got just 2-3 minutes more, Kinnari. I'll just extend that. Shamim's question, right? Are teachers being trained to be inclusive of children of different abilities? Right now, many children have been left out. This is not only bad for them, but also for the mainstream kids as they lose out on the opportunity to learn from them. And it's a broader, larger question about inclusive education rather than.
Yeah. Just one clarification before I go there is that the early childhood education specialization doesn't prepare one to be teacher. Yeah, it is not a B.Ed program or a D.Ed program. But at the same time, given that the field currently do not have regulations and the kind of experiences that we provide to students here, that is to prepare curricula, to analyze curricula, to develop and to try and work with children, one may be able to get prepared to work as teachers. Our emphasis is on preparing individuals to work as curriculum developers, as material designers, as curriculum analysts and researchers, or work with non-governmental organizations, or working with Anganwadi workers or preschool teachers. So it is a range of things that the specialization prepares for, not just a teacher, right? Of course, it gives a lot of experiences on which you can build your teaching abilities. Yes, teachers. So, I'm going to answer this at a broad level. That being trained as an inclusive teacher, inclusion as an idea itself is a fairly broad idea. Are you talking about language inclusion, social inclusion in terms of caste, class, gender, or are you talking about just children with special needs and their inclusion in classroom? So one thing is to understand what are we meaning by inclusion. Of course, when we refer to inclusion in the most commonsensical terms, we do refer to children with special needs. And teachers, there are special education courses that are offered by several non-governmental organizations like the Spastic Society and some others, which offer a teacher training program, being a special educator. A general B.Ed program program or a D.Ed program may not prepare one to be a special educator, but it will certainly give a sense of what inclusion is about and how do you work out inclusion in classrooms, how do you deal with inclusion and issues of exclusion. Similarly, in the specialization and the inclusive education course that we have in the specialization, the concept of inclusion, what are issues of inclusion, what are some of the teaching practices and school practices that can enable more inclusive settings is what we focus in both the curriculum course in early childhood specialization as well as in the elective course that inclusive education that is available here. Yeah.
I think that's just exactly the quite a similar question that Ajit was also trying to ask. Is there a change required in the curriculum to encourage the inclusion of
it requires a change in the mindset. It requires a complete change in the attitude and mindset.
Hari, it's probably the last question. Let me see the other questions we probably have answered. I'll go through. It's talking about alternative schools or innovative practices. Wondering if it could be best to create a good learning atmosphere, and should we bring that or strengthen that into the mainstream schools? So
and the mainstream should become the alternative for everybody. So yes, what you're thinking, I think, Hari, is what we call as alternative practices is something which is not a certain fixed way of teaching, learning, textual, academic oriented reading learning, which we know of as mainstream. There are several mainstream public schools which also do a lot of good work. But the alternative, as we know today, is this more holistic avenues that are provided for children's development, a lot of explorations outside of classroom work, not relying on academics and textbooks alone. If that is the alternative that we are talking about, I think that is what is certainly needed in our mainstream schools, and those ideas do need to come into our mainstream schools. Yeah, so that's a good thought.
Thank you. Thanks Hari for that question. Thanks Kinnari. I'll just see. I think we have probably answered the thing. Gyan, I didn't quite understand the question about childhood education label. We're not trying to label anything. What type of work needed in there? Work needed. We need to have the curriculum needs to be. We answered that all throughout. How to reform early childhood. Ankur, this is what we were probably talking in the beginning. The reforms required and different, even from regulation across
teachers, the way in which the system is placed today, the kind of training and strengthening the Anganwadi systems, the private sector where there is no regulation. So there is a whole lot of things that need to be done.
Ankur, I tend to agree with this. Is like telling you will have some elderly people in the home could take care of. Absolutely fine if they can create the right kind of environment. Kinnari, your views?
And provided they are able to give a certain quality time, are able to tell stories like our grandparents used to, are able to talk to children, are able to let them play, dirty their hands and play with utensils and do all kinds of things. But are also informed about what are good practices. You cannot be a completely authoritarian parenting or guardian that is around, and you can't be a completely laissez-faire kind of a guardian around. You need to strike that balance to enable children to become prepared to go out of the home and face the environment.
Absolutely. Good. I think it was worth extending it by 5-10 minutes. Thanks, Juno, for that comment. Thank you, Kinnari, so much. I think probably I have learned as much as the viewers here. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for sending those very interesting questions. We are back again next week. The theme for the next week is to talk about the development sector with a focus on the MA development program. Till then, goodbye and good luck.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.